I woke up as the bride of the man who burned my home. The thought struck me as cruel irony as my eyes opened to a room that was both breathtaking and suffocating. The ceiling arched high above, adorned with gilded carvings that caught the soft light of dawn sneaking through tall arched windows. Sheer white curtains swayed gently, stirred by the breeze that smelled faintly of rain and pine. The walls were of deep mahogany, polished so smooth I could see my reflection, pale, wide-eyed, hair tousled like I'd been fighting ghosts in my sleep. My fingers trembled as I reached up, brushing hair from my face, only to freeze at the cold weight circling my ring finger. A band of gold, simple but heavy. A wedding ring. No. My breath hitched as my gaze fell to the bed, to the man beside me. He lay on his side, dark hair falling over his brow, his face turned toward mine. His expression was peaceful, the barest hint of a smile touching his lips, as if he dreamed of something sweet. Or someone. His arm was draped across my waist, his hand resting with casual familiarity as though it belonged there, as though I belonged to him. Darian. The name thundered through my skull like a war drum. Darian, the man who had set my world ablaze. I saw him again as I had last seen him, standing tall before the charred ruins of my family's estate, fire reflecting in his cold eyes, sword at his side, smoke rising in columns behind him like dark wings. And now he was my husband? My heart raced, each beat a frantic drum in my chest. I fought to control my breathing, but the air felt too thick, too heavy. My hands gripped the silk of the sheets, soft, expensive, and marked at the edge with gold embroidery. A phoenix, wings outstretched in flame. His family's crest, the symbol of the man who had destroyed mine. I felt trapped in a cage of luxury. My skin prickled, my pulse loud in my ears. I needed to get out of this bed, out of this room, away from him. But before I could move, before I could even think of escape, he stirred. His fingers flexed against my waist, his lashes fluttered open, and dark eyes met mine. For a heartbeat, we simply stared at each other. His gaze was softer than I remembered, or perhaps I had never truly looked. "You had a nightmare again," he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. His thumb brushed lightly over my cheek, and I flinched at the touch. He didn't seem surprised, only sad. I wish I could take them away. My lips parted, but no sound came out. What could I say? That the nightmare was real? That he was the nightmare? I swallowed hard, my throat dry as ash. Why are you here?" The words escaped in a whisper. His brow furrowed. "Because this is our home, Nissa." His fingers moved as if to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, but I recoiled, and his hand fell back to the bed. That flicker of sorrow returned to his eyes as if my fear wounded him. I forced myself to look around, as if the answer to this madness might be hidden in the room itself. The chamber was vast, too vast, filled with things that screamed wealth and power. The bed was carved with symbols I didn't recognize. The fireplace was cold but grand, and above it hung a painting of a woman in a red gown. I didn't know her. I didn't know any of this. "I don't understand," I breathed. Darian pushed himself up on one elbow, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "What don't you understand, my love?" My love. The words felt like chains, heavy and unearned. I wanted to scream at him, to demand the truth. Was this some spell? Some cruel trick? But my body betrayed me, too stiff with terror to do more than stare. My mind reeled, searching for reason. Could I have dreamed it all? Could he truly be my husband, and everything else, the fire, the betrayal, a nightmare born of my own fears? No. I felt the heat of those flames even now, smelled the smoke, heard my father's voice calling out in the dark. "I need to get up," I said, voice tight. I pushed back the covers, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. My feet sank into a plush rug, the color of deep wine. Darian didn't stop me. He only watched, his expression unreadable now. The cold of the room hit me, though a fire burned low in the hearth. My nightgown was of fine silk, unfamiliar against my skin. I felt like an imposter in my own life. Nissa. Darian's voice was soft. Are you angry with me? Have I done something? I froze, fingers curling at my sides. Only destroyed everything I loved. But I didn't speak the words aloud. Not yet. I needed answers first. I crossed to the window and pulled aside the curtain. Outside stretched rolling hills, a courtyard below, guards in dark livery pacing the walls. It was his home, our home, he said, and it felt more like a prison. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Where are we? Darian rose from the bed, moving to stand a few paces behind me. I felt his presence like a storm at my back. This is the Southern Keep, on the borderlands, he said gently. We came here for peace. You said you loved the quiet. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I didn't remember that. I didn't remember choosing this. His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine, taller, broader, but not the monster I recalled. Just a man who somehow now shared my life. I don't understand what's happening, I whispered. Darian's hand hovered near my shoulder, hesitated, then fell back. Then let me help you remember. But the only thing I wanted to remember was how to run. The dining hall was a cathedral of stone and light. Massive columns rose toward the vaulted ceiling, their bases carved with the curling shapes of dragons and wolves. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, scattering patterns of red, gold, and deep blue across the long table where I sat. The colors felt too warm, too alive, for the chill that wrapped itself around my heart. Darian sat across from me at first, but when I hesitated at the untouched plate before me, he rose and came to my side. With slow, deliberate care, he pulled out the heavy chair beside mine and lowered himself into it. His movements were so measured, so careful, as if I might break beneath his gaze or flee at the smallest wrong word. Here, he said softly, lifting a goblet filled with spiced wine. He offered it to me, his fingers brushing mine as I took it. His touch sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I didn't drink. I couldn't. My stomach twisted at the scent of the wine, rich and sweet, reminding me too much of feasts long gone. Feasts before fire had consumed everything. You should eat something, Darian said, voice low, almost hesitant. His dark eyes searched mine, as if seeking some sign of forgiveness that I couldn't give. You haven't touched a thing since yesterday. Yesterday? The word echoed inside me. What was yesterday in this strange world I'd woken to? He reached for a small silver bowl of berries and set it closer to me. These are your favorite. You said so, remember? No. I didn't remember. I remembered smoke and ruin. I remembered my father's voice, calling to me through the crackle of flame. I remembered Darian's figure standing at the edge of the inferno, silhouetted in destruction. I pushed the bowl back, my fingers trembling so slightly I prayed he didn't see. His smile faltered, just for a moment. Then he straightened, tried again. We could ride out to the orchard later. You always say the air helps clear your mind. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed on his hands as he poured water into my cup, as he sliced bread and offered it to me. Every gesture was too kind, too careful. It felt wrong. As wrong as waking in his bed, as wrong as the gold band that still circled my finger like a chain. I couldn't stop watching him, waiting for the cruelty I knew hid beneath that stranger's smile. The silence grew heavy between us, broken only by the soft clink of silver on porcelain. His voice, when it came again, was quieter. Is there something you wish to say, Nissa? I met his gaze at last, unable to keep the question inside. Why won't you speak of it? Of what? His brow furrowed, confusion, or perhaps caution flickering across his face. The past, I said. My voice felt thin, hollow. What you did? Darian's jaw tightened. His gaze dropped to the table for a beat, then lifted to mine with careful steadiness. The past is behind us. I thought that's where you wanted it to stay. His words were gentle, but they cut deeper than any blade. I didn't know how to respond. Was this some game? Was he pretending for my sake, or his own? I felt the weight of the hall around me, the high ceiling pressing down, the stone walls closing in. I needed air, light, truth, anything but this suffocating kindness. The doors at the end of the hall creaked open, and a familiar figure approached. Nissa, my maid, my shadow since girlhood. She looked the same as always. Small, quick, with dark hair pulled back tight, worry etched into every line of her face. "My lady," she said softly, curtsying as she neared. Her eyes flicked to Darian, then back to me. "You look pale. You must try to eat." Her voice, kind and familiar, was almost enough to undo me. I nodded, but my hands remained frozen in my lap. "I'll see to her, Nissa," Darian said, his tone gentle, but firm enough that Nissa hesitated before retreating. When she'd gone, I rose from the table, unable to sit a moment longer. Darian stood as well, but didn't follow when I slipped from the hall into a side chamber, a small room with a looking glass framed in dark wood. I stared at my reflection. My skin was too pale, my eyes too wide, my mouth tight with fear I couldn't voice. And on my hand, that ring. The gold glinted in the light, hateful and beautiful all at once. I gripped it with trembling fingers and pulled. Nothing happened at first. The ring didn't budge. Frustration and panic welled in my chest. I pulled harder. A sharp crack split the air. I froze. The mirror had fractured, a long crack running from top to bottom like a wound. The room seemed to shudder around me. Magic. It had to be magic. Some curse, some enchantment binding me to this man, to this life I didn't choose. I backed away from the mirror, heart pounding, and stared at the ring. No matter how I tugged, it wouldn't come off. My breath came fast, shallow. Had he done this? Had Darian trapped me here with sorcery, binding me to him in more ways than vows? The door opened behind me, and I stiffened. "Nissa?" Darian's voice was soft, almost unsure. "Are you all right?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was too full of questions, of fear, of the sound of cracking glass, and of the smile that no longer seemed so kind. The throne room of Prince Kyle was a place built to impress and to intimidate. The floor beneath my feet gleamed like polished ice, cold marble veined with silver. Purple and gold banners cascaded from the vaulted ceiling, their edges heavy with embroidery and age. Sunlight poured through massive stained glass windows, casting fractured beams of color across the room, painting the stone with the heraldry of ancient houses. Each step I took echoed, as if the chamber itself whispered back my every move. I kept my chin lifted, my face calm, though my heart thundered beneath my ribs. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on me. Lords and ladies stood in small knots, their fine silks rustling softly, their voices lowered, but no less sharp for it. Every glance that slid my way carried the same mixture: curiosity, suspicion, and barely concealed scorn. Darian walked beside me, his posture straight, his face carved from stone. He said nothing, but his hand hovered near mine, as if torn between duty and comfort. His black and silver tunic bore the phoenix crest that haunted my dreams. The same crest that marked the sheets where I awoke. The same crest that once flew above my ruin. I hated how my skin burned beneath those stares, how small I felt beneath the vaulted arches and gilded banners. I was no queen. No princess. Just a pawn, moved to the center of a game I didn't understand. And they knew it. I could hear it in their whispers. The cursed union. How long will she last, do you think? Pity. Such a pretty thing. Wasted on him. Darian's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into a fist at his side. He heard them too, but he said nothing. He didn't look at me, though I sensed his tension in every line of his body. We approached the dais where Prince Kael sat. He lounged like a man born to power, one leg draped over the arm of his throne, a goblet of wine in his hand. His hair was dark as midnight, his eyes sharp and watching, glinting with amusement. His smile didn't reach those eyes. "Nissa," Kael said, drawing out my name like a private joke. His voice was smooth, warm as honey, but with an edge that pricked like a blade. "Welcome to my hall at last, and looking so radiant, no less." I curtsied, careful, measured. "Your Highness." Darian inclined his head in a bow, his expression unreadable. Kyl's gaze flicked between us, lingered on Darian's clenched hand, then returned to me. He raised his goblet, as if in toast. "Strange, isn't it, how time gives us what fire once took away?" The words hit me like a slap. My breath caught, but I kept my face composed, barely. Darian's head turned sharply toward him, and for the first time I saw true anger flash in his eyes. But again, he said nothing. The tension between them crackled like a storm about to break. Kyle laughed softly, sipping his wine. "Ah, but I jest. Peace suits me, and your union brings peace. We should celebrate that, shouldn't we?" His court echoed him with polite, hollow laughter. I felt no warmth in it, only the chill of pretense. Servants moved through the hall, bearing platters of fruit, goblets of wine, delicacies meant to distract. But I tasted none of it. I felt like a statue, frozen on display, a curiosity in this den of vipers. Kyle descended from his throne, with the easy grace of a predator. He circled us slowly, as if appraising a prize horse. His fingers brushed my sleeve, light, fleeting, but enough to make my skin crawl. "And you, my dear Nissa," he said, voice low enough only I and Darian could hear. "How does it feel to wear the crown of ash?" Darian stepped between us so fast I hardly saw him move. His voice was quiet but firm. "You forget yourself, Kale." Kyle's smile only widened. "Do I? Or do I simply speak truths no one else dares voice?" I could see it then, the game beneath the civility. Kyle enjoyed this, poking, prodding, waiting to see who would bleed first. I drew a breath, steadying myself. "I am honored to stand here in peace," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "May it last." Kyle's gaze sharpened, as if surprised by my reply. Then he chuckled. "Brave girl." "I see why he chose you." Darian's hand found mine, fingers warm and solid around mine. A silent promise, or a silent plea? I couldn't tell. Kyle stepped back, raising his goblet once more. "Then let us drink to peace, and to the courage of our new princess." The court raised their cups, but the toast tasted hollow, the air thick with unspoken doubts. As the gathering drifted into polite chatter, I felt Darian's hand still tight on mine. His voice, when he spoke, was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." "For what? For the stares? The whispers? The past neither of us could escape?" I didn't know. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. The castle had grown quieter since the court's gathering, but not in a way that brought peace. The silence felt heavy, thick with secrets. And in that silence, I began to hear things. At first, I thought it was only my mind, weary, overwrought from the constant tension, but the sounds came again, night after night. Soft whispers that seemed to slip through the cracks in the stone, the creak of a floorboard when no one walked behind me. A breath, a sigh, the faint scrape of nails along wood. I would turn, heart racing, certain I'd find someone there, but the corridor behind me would be empty, the shadows undisturbed. The servants swore they heard nothing. But I knew better. The walls of this place held memories, and they were trying to speak. Sleep brought no refuge. When my eyes closed, the past returned. The flames roared in my dreams, hot and greedy, devouring everything I loved. The smoke choked me, the crackle of burning wood filled my ears, and through it all I saw him, Darian. Standing on the far side of the blaze, his face half lit by firelight, his eyes dark and unreadable. He did not move, did not speak, just watched as my world turned to ash. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around me like bonds I couldn't break. My hands shook as I pushed them back, seeking air, light, anything but the dark weight of memory. And yet, when morning came, I said nothing of the dreams. Not to Nissa, not to Darian, but he knew. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and the castle grew dim, I found myself in one of the unused rooms. A chamber with a tall mirror framed in dark wood, the same mirror I had fractured days before. The crack ran like a scar down its length, splitting my reflection into two broken halves. I stared at it, at myself, at the ring still encircling my finger, heavy and unmoving. I touched the crack, traced it with trembling fingers. "Nissa." His voice came from the doorway, soft, hesitant. I turned, startled. Darian stood there, watching me. His expression was gentler than I expected. No frustration, no anger. Just quiet concern. "You shouldn't be alone in here," he said. "These halls, they're full of ghosts." I almost laughed, but the sound died in my throat. "I hear them," I whispered instead. He came closer, but slowly, as if afraid to frighten me off. "I know. I hear them too." We stood in silence for a moment, and I realized how tired he looked. The weight in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, he carried more than just the burden of this place. I shifted, and my hand brushed the edge of the cracked mirror. A shard of glass caught my skin, a thin line of red blooming along my palm. I hissed, drawing back. Blood welled at the cut. Darian was beside me in an instant. "Let me see," he said, his voice steady. He took my hand gently in his, turning it over to examine the wound. His touch was warm, careful. He pulled a cloth from his belt and wrapped it around my palm, binding it with surprising skill. "You shouldn't touch broken things," he said quietly. "Everything here feels broken," I replied before I could stop myself. His hands stilled. He met my gaze, and for the first time, he let me see past the walls he kept so carefully in place. There was sorrow there, deep and raw, and something else. Regret. "If I could change what happened," he said, his voice low, "meant only for me, I would. Please, Nissa, don't look at me like I'm the monster in your dreams." I didn't know what to say. The words tangled on my tongue. Because wasn't he? Wasn't he the one who stood as my world burned? And yet, here he was, binding my wound with such tenderness, speaking to me not as a conqueror, but as a man who wished to be forgiven. I felt the warmth of his fingers through the cloth, the closeness of him, the storm of emotions inside me, anger, fear, and something softer, something that terrified me more than either. I wanted to hate him. I needed to, but in that moment, I wasn't sure I could. "Thank you," I said at last, my voice barely more than a breath. He nodded, releasing my hand, though his fingers lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary. We stood there, in that ruined room, in the fading light, and for the first time I wondered if the cracks I saw were not just in the mirror or in the walls of this castle, but in myself. The Library of Silas was like stepping into another world, a world where time itself seemed to slow, where every breath carried the weight of knowledge too old to name. The air smelled of ancient parchment, of herbs long dried and hung in bundles along the high beams. Candlelight flickered in pools of gold, throwing shifting shadows across the endless rows of books that lined the towering walls. The shelves climbed so high I could not see their end, each filled with volumes bound in cracked leather or strange hide, some sealed shut with locks of iron or silver. Silas moved among them like a ghost, his long robes brushing the stone floor, his pale hands tracing the spines of the books as if greeting old friends. He was thin, almost too thin, with hair the color of frost and eyes like molten silver. When he looked at me, it was as though he saw not just me, but the threads of fate that tangled around me, binding me tight. "I'm grateful you agreed to see me," I said, though my voice felt small in that vast space. Silas offered a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his strange, bright eyes. "Grateful? No, my lady. You are wise. Few come to seek truths they fear." I swallowed, unsure how to answer that. The truth was, I had come because I could no longer bear not knowing. The whispers in the halls, the weight of the ring on my finger, the crack in the mirror that seemed to split my soul in two, they haunted me. Silas gestured to a long table where books and scrolls lay scattered. Some opened to pages inked with runes I could not read. A single candle burned low there, the wax pooled around its base. "Sit, if you will. Speak what troubles you." I sat, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. The words rushed out before I could stop them. What is this bond between us, between me and Darian? Why do I feel as if I've lived this before, and lost everything? Silas regarded me for a long moment, then moved to stand across the table from me. His fingers touched the edge of an open book, lingering on a faded drawing, two figures bound by a knotted cord, the cord fraying at its ends. "There is an old tale," he said softly, "older than this castle, older than the kingdom it guards. A tale of souls bound by betrayal. It is said that when a trust is broken so deeply that the soul itself shatters, the pieces will seek each other out again, and again, and again." My throat tightened. "And what happens when they find each other?" "The knot tightens with hate," Silas said, voice like the wind through dry leaves. "And loosens with forgiveness." I stared at him, at the book, at the endless shelves that seemed to press closer with every word. "But who betrayed who?" I asked, my voice raw. "Was it him? Or was it me?" Silas's smile was sad, and older than he looked. "That, my lady, is the question every soul asks in the end, and the answer is rarely as simple as we wish." The room seemed colder suddenly, the candles flickering, as if a draft had found its way in. Or perhaps it was only my heart, chilled by the weight of what I heard. "I remember the fire," I whispered. "I remember him standing there, watching as everything I loved burned." Silas nodded. "Memory is a tricky thing. It shows us what we expect, what we fear, but not always what was." I wanted to argue, to tell him I knew what I'd seen, but doubt coiled in me, slow and silent. What if I had only seen part of the truth? What if there was more I had refused to see? Silas circled the table, coming to stand beside me. His presence was strange, comforting and unsettling at once. "The bond between you and Darian is not a curse placed by an enemy. It is one woven by your own souls across lifetimes, and it will bind you still, until you choose to unbind it." "How?" I asked, though I feared the answer. His silver gaze met mine, steady and sure. "By facing what was, and choosing what will be." I looked down at my hands, at the ring that glinted in the candlelight. "The knot tightens with hate, loosens with forgiveness." Could I forgive him? Could I forgive myself, if there was more to forgive? "Will it end?" I asked softly. "This cycle?" Silas's voice was gentle. "It will end when you both choose to let it. Not before." I rose, feeling the weight of the library around me, the weight of his words, the weight of the choice that loomed ahead. "Thank you," I said, though I wasn't sure what I thanked him for. Perhaps just for listening. Perhaps for daring to speak truths I could not yet face. He inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "Go carefully, my lady. The path before you is yours to shape." And as I left that room of ancient books and older truths, I wondered if I had the strength to shape it at all. The night air in the garden was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and damp earth. Moonlight spilled across the stone path at my feet, silvering the leaves, turning every shadow into a lurking shape. I had agreed to meet him here, against my better judgment, because curiosity or perhaps desperation had overcome caution. Lord Marion stepped from the darkness as if he belonged to it. Tall, elegant, with golden hair that caught the light, and a smile that could charm secrets from a locked chest. His cloak swept behind him like a shadow, and his eyes gleamed with mischief and intent. "My lady Nissa," he said softly, inclining his head. "How lovely you look beneath the moon. As if it were made to crown you." I stiffened at his easy flattery. "Why ask me here in secret, my lord? What is it you want?" Marion's smile deepened, though there was something sharper beneath it now. He moved closer, his voice low, conspiratorial. "I want what you want, Nissa. Freedom." I folded my arms, though my heart beat faster. "Freedom from what?" He glanced toward the castle, where towers rose like silent sentries against the night. From this prison you find yourself in. From him. You may think yourself bound by duty, but you deserve more. You deserve a life of your choosing. His words slithered into my mind, tempting, dangerous. And yet, wasn't that what I dreamed of? A life free of the chains of this marriage, of the weight of the past? You don't have to stay in this prison of a marriage, Marion continued, his voice velvet smooth. Help me, and you'll be free. The offer hung between us, heavy as the night itself. I forced my voice steady. And what would you have me do? Marion's smile was all charm, but his eyes gleamed cold. Nothing that would soil your hands, I promise. Merely share what you see, what you hear. Stand aside when the time comes. When Darian falls, no one will blame you. And you will be free, truly free. I can see to that. I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. The thought of betraying Darian sent a wave of sickness through me. And that startled me most of all. Darian, who I had feared. Darian, whose memory haunted my dreams. Darian, who bound my wounds with trembling hands, who looked at me as if I mattered. I should want this, shouldn't I? This chance to escape, to be rid of the man who once stood before the ruins of my life. But instead, I felt only revulsion at the thought. The idea of betrayal tasted bitter on my tongue. I can't, I whispered. Marion's expression flickered. Surprise, then annoyance smoothed beneath charm. You can. You must see what he is, a man who burned your home, your future. He will do worse, given the chance. You owe him nothing. I shook my head, struggling to find words for the storm inside me. You don't know him, don't I? His voice hardened. He is a killer, a usurper, a man with blood on his hands, perhaps even yours one day if you stay. But I was already backing away. The garden seemed colder now, the night deeper. The scent of flowers turned cloying. I have to go, I said, my voice tight. Marion watched me, and for a moment, I saw the mask slip. Beneath the charm was steel, ambition, hunger. Think on it, Nissa. You may not get another chance. I fled before he could say more, my heart pounding, my thoughts a tangle of fear and confusion. As I reached the castle doors, I paused, my fingers resting against the cold wood. I realized, with a mix of dread and strange relief, that I hated the idea of betraying Darian. I hated it more than I could explain, because somewhere along this twisted path I had begun to believe in him, and that frightened me most of all. The grand ballroom of Prince Kale's palace was a sea of light and music. Crystal chandeliers hung like captured stars, their glow reflected 1,000 times over in the polished marble floor and the gilded mirrors lining the walls. Music filled the air, lilting, intoxicating, a melody that seemed woven of silk and smoke. Masks hid the faces of nobles and courtiers, feathers and jewels glinting beneath the flickering glow of candles. I moved through it all as if in a dream, the colors too bright, the sounds too sharp. My gown swept the floor, silver threads catching the light, but I felt no weight of it, only the weight of the choice that haunted me still. Marion's offer. His whispered promises, his threats hidden beneath velvet words. And then there was Darian. He stood at my side, dressed in black and silver, his mask carved like the face of a wolf. But beneath the mask, I could feel his tension, see the way his gaze scanned the crowd. Protecting me, I realized, or perhaps protecting himself, or both. Kyle watched us from his throne at the far end of the hall, a mask of gold hiding his smile, but not the sharp amusement in his eyes. This was his game, and we were the pieces. I tried to breathe, to focus, but something felt wrong. The music was too fast, the laughter too loud, the shadows in the corners too deep. And then I saw him, the assassin, a figure moving against the flow of dancers, cloaked in midnight. A mask plain and forgettable, but his hand glinted, and in that glint, I saw the dagger. My heart stopped. The world slowed. He was moving toward Darian. Without thinking, without choosing, I stepped between them. The blade found me, a flash of pain, sharp and searing, blooming in my side. I gasped. the breath stolen from my lungs, the world tilting. Darian's arms were around me before I fell. I felt his strength, his warmth, his fear. His mask slipped away, and I saw his face, pale, stricken, his eyes wide with horror. "Nissa," he breathed, lowering me gently to the floor, his hand pressed to my wound. Blood stained his fingers. "Stay with me. Please." I tried to speak, but my voice was lost beneath the roar of blood in my ears. The music had stopped. The room was a blur of faces, of gasps, of chaos. But I saw him. Darian. Truly saw him. And in his eyes, I found no monster. Only a man who loved me. A man terrified of losing me. "I'm here," I whispered. Though I wasn't sure he could hear me, my hand found his, weak but certain. "I'm here." He clutched my hand as if it could anchor me to this world. "Help is coming," he said, his voice breaking. "You'll be all right. You must be." Around us, guards seized the assassin, dragging him away. Kyle stood, shouting orders. But all of it faded. There was only Darian, his face so close to mine, his eyes dark with sorrow and something deeper, love. In that moment, I knew. Whatever shadows lay between us, whatever past haunted our steps, this was real. His fear, his care, his love, they were real. And I no longer hated the thought of belonging to him. The days that followed the ball blurred together, a storm of accusations, confessions, and long overdue truths. Darian moved through it all with a quiet, focused fury I had never seen before. He stood before Kyle and the court, evidence laid bare, and named Marion for what he was. A traitor who had plotted not only against Darian, but against the fragile peace the realm so desperately needed. And I stood beside him. It was my voice that recounted the meeting in the garden, my words that painted the picture Marion could no longer deny. His charm cracked beneath the weight of truth, his silver tongue failing him at last. When it was over, Marion was gone. Exiled beyond the borders, his titles stripped, his schemes undone. But the scars he left behind would take longer to heal. And then came the night of the ritual. Silas prepared the chamber, deep beneath the castle, where the stones seemed older than the world itself. Candles burned low, their flames steady despite the draft. The air smelled of sage and old magic, heavy with the weight of what was to come. Darian and I stood at the heart of it, our hands joined, our eyes locked. There was no anger in his gaze now, no fear in mine, only the quiet, tentative hope that we might finally be free. Silas's voice rose in a chant older than language, the words a thread weaving through the air, binding us and unbinding us all at once. "Betrayed souls are bound to meet again," he said, as if reminding us. "But tonight, you choose. You choose what comes next." Darian squeezed my hand, his thumb brushing mine, steadying me. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low, "for everything. For what I did, for what I couldn't stop. I'm sorry too," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "For the hate I carried. For not seeing you sooner." And in that moment, as simple as breath, as powerful as a storm, the knot between us loosened. I felt it, like a weight lifting, like chains falling away. The magic pulsed through us, not tearing, not breaking, but gently releasing. We were free. The sun was rising when we stood together at the place where it all began. The ruins of my family's home lay quiet now, the stones softened by moss, the ash long scattered. The air smelled clean, fresh with morning, a new day. Darian stood beside me, his hand warm in mine, his face turned to the horizon where gold spilled across the sky. The light caught in his dark hair, touched his face, and I saw him as I never had before, not as the man who destroyed my world, but as the one who had helped me find it again. This time he said softly, "We build together." I turned to him, my heart full, my fears at last quiet. And for the first time, I didn't hold back. I reached up, my fingers brushing his cheek, and he leaned into the touch as if it was what he'd been waiting for all along. Our lips met, not the hesitant, guarded kisses of duty or guilt, but something real, something new. A promise sealed not by fate, but by choice. When we parted, The sun had risen fully, casting light over the land where once there had been only shadow. And I knew, as surely as I knew my own name, that this was our beginning.